And it didn't take long, and a policeman, Polish policeman, came to arrest me, to take me out. We don't know how he knew that I was there, but he came to arrest me. And Yula, his wife, pregnant, fell on her knees, started to kiss his hand, and said, "She's a good Jewish girl. Please leave her. We like her." And he had also pity against the policeman. He said, "Have you got any gold?" So I took off a ring, I had a chain, whatever I had, I gave it to him. And he said, "Okay, I'm leaving her here, but it's a very dangerous place for her to be here." I had nowhere to go. I still had to stay there, nowhere to go. And I was lying very often at night, looking at the windows, looking at the doors, trying to figure out, if they knock at the door, how will I escape? How should I escape from this place? I was so preoccupied with this. And we realized I couldn't be there. But I couldn't hide at the same time. So I had a chain with a big cross, and she gave me a basket, Yula, and I would go to the market to shop for her. And when I was walking to the market, small kids would run behind me and scream, "Żydu was ghetto," the Jews from the ghetto. And I guess the neighbors somehow felt that I wasn't really a cousin, and they looked at me. The kids were running after me, and I knew that I couldn't stay there anymore.
So
it was too dangerous for me. So when Henrik, who was very interested to help me, came, I told him the story. He said no, and Yula decided that I should move out. But where could I move out? On the 3rd floor, there was a woman by the name of Mrs. Pivek. She lost her husband, and she was afraid to be alone in the apartment. So Yula suggested that I should stay with her. I should stay with her for a while. She didn't know I was Jewish, you know. Only the kids knew, but not everybody in the building knew. Anyhow, so I moved to the 3rd floor. Can you imagine? I lived there maybe for 2 days. She was so happy to have me for company, that 5 Gestapo people came downstairs to look for me. Gestapo. They said, "We know that a Jewish girl was hiding in your place. Where is she?" And she started to cry, and I was upstairs in the same building. You see, there's always a little luck. I always had a little luck behind me. When they came to look for me, who opens the door to come? Henrik. And he sees the Gestapo sitting there. He ran up the steps. He put my coat on my shoulders and slowly smuggled me out through the same building, outside. He smuggled me out from this building. And I was standing on a street, on a cold street, for hours. And then when he felt it was okay, nobody knew that Mrs. Pivek upstairs didn't know what was going on downstairs. I came back to my apartment, but we knew that this was not a good place for me to stay anymore. He had to find another place for me. It was important to find another. I had to escape from this neighborhood altogether. So he found a place for me, the 2 sisters, on Śniadecka Street. Śniadecka Street. They had a very elegant, beautiful apartment in a beautiful section of Warsaw. And I lived there, and our story was that I was a refugee from Vilno, a city of Vilno. You know, my parents were killed by the Germans, and he is a good friend of mine, trying to help me. We had to have always a good story. Why am I a young girl all by myself without parents? We had to have a good story. And I lived with the 2 sisters for a while, but I felt it wasn't a good place for me because they had many visitors, and somebody could recognize me. It was very dangerous to be there. I had to play the role of a Polish girl all the time. I started to dye my hair because I was have very black hair, which wasn't good. So I had a story at the hairdressers that I have a boyfriend who doesn't like my hair and he wants me to be blonde. Blonde I couldn't be, but I could be chestnut brown. So they would pour peroxide on me, the hairdressers, for hours and hours, and I had some kind of a different color hair, which wasn't black, which was good. Because black was always, they said the Jewish women, the Jewish people have black hair. You know, I didn't want to have black hair. So I could do this at that time while I stayed with the two sisters. And always a good story attached to it. My boyfriend likes pretending that Henrik is my boyfriend. He doesn't like black hair, he likes chestnut. There was always a good story. But we realized that this place was not good for me. So even before yet, we started to work on a Kennkarte for me. Every Polish girl, every Polish man needed a Kennkarte. It means an identity papers. I was preparing myself to go and get a paper, but it was too dangerous. So we discovered a priest through Henrik. We discovered a priest who was doing it gladly for money. He will take out a baby's death certificate and will put in back the birth certificate. And that's what he did for me, but he didn't know me. We gave money to number one. This number one gave to number two to number three. And by the time it reached the priest, it was number 10. A chain of 10 people. So he never knew for whom he made the papers. You know, he never knew the baby. And the papers were very important. Without this, you couldn't exist in Warsaw. You couldn't work without this. I had to take a chance, when I had the birth certificate of the baby, to go to the German headquarters and make a Kennkarte, which I have here. Show them that I am a Polish girl. Maria Janina Burczyńska was my name, and I had to show that I am this person, you know? And when I went, full of apprehension, thinking maybe they recognize me, they'll arrest me, and that's the end of my life. They didn't even look at me. They took the photograph, they attached, they put a stamp, they gave me, and I walked out with a Kennkarte, and I was 100% Polish girl. 100% Polish girl. And psychologically, I had to work on myself that I am not Jewish anymore. I had to lie in bed, cover myself with a blanket, and talk to myself. You are Maria Janina Burczyńska. You were born here and here. Your parents' name, your grandparents' name. I had to know it by heart in case the Germans would stop me and ask those questions. I should sing it out without emotion, without getting red or whatever, because they would recognize if it's false or not false right away. They knew. So I had to talk to myself for maybe a whole year to train myself. So that's what I did. That's what I did. And one day indeed, they stopped, you know, they knew that that was a Polish underground against the Germans. And in Warsaw was very dangerous because the Polish people were big patriots, and they would very often kill a German on the street when they saw one. And then the punishment was that they would surround the building, take out 100 men, put them against the wall, and shoot them. For each German, 100 Poles died. And the Polish people are unbelievable patriots. It didn't stop. They didn't stop. They were shooting wherever there was a chance, a German on the street. So Henrik found a place with a family for me. The Brochowskis was a family, a very wealthy, once upon a time family, but during the war nobody worked, the son, daughter-in-law. So they decided to rent a room, and he managed to rent a room for me there, and that was the best place for me. So I moved out from the sisters. I had already the Kennkarte, and I had to find a position. The beginning was very difficult. I couldn't show when I moved into this place that I'm not working. I had to leave the house very early in the morning and show them that I'm working. So I used to go to a church and sit in the church all day long, go out for a few minutes, come back, because the women who used to work with the flowers, orange flowers in the church, should notice me. If I would sit all day, it would be suspicious. So I would go out and come in and so on, but I had to stay in the church all day and come home in the evening pretending that I'm working, because it was suspicious. Where would I take the money to pay for the rent and everything else? It should not be suspicious. I used to go out until, thank goodness, Henrik and another friend of mine, Genia, found a position for me in a library. And I started to work in a library in Warsaw. I had to detach myself. If they spoke in the library about the dirty Jews that were found out in a cellar and killed out, I could look at them straight in the eyes without getting pink on my face. I trained myself to such a degree. You know, when you want to survive, it's amazing what you can do with yourself. I worked on myself. In the library, I heard all kinds of stories. There is how dare this Jew had a library in a basement. How dare this Jew had this, and how dare this Jew had that. And we can buy his books now because the Germans killed him. We can get the books. I used to hear all those stories because during the war you couldn't buy any new books, you see. So you had to buy new books this way, get new books this way. And I used to hear the most horror stories that happened to Jews who were discovered and killed, etc., etc. And I will look them straight in the eye and not get pink or red or whatever. I trained myself to such a degree that's hard to believe, that nobody would say I'm Jewish. Nobody will dare to say I'm Jewish. In the library, we were 3 people working in the library. There was her name was, she was a countess, Michalina Dekleist. She was the manager, and I was Maria, and there was another Maria. We were working in the library to give books, you know, to give books out. So I had a few things happen at the library that people who came, and I knew we were Jewish, we're not supposed to show it, that we know each other from before, like make new acquaintances there, although it was a friend from school or a friend from the neighborhood, etc., etc. Opposite was a very big beauty salon, opposite the library. And one day, who walks in? My brother's best friend, a little girl, who worked there as a beautician. She blonde, blue eyes, walked into the library, and she worked opposite. And that was it, you know. One day I came to work, and a woman, the owner of this beauty salon opposite, came into the library and said to me very early in the morning, guess what? I had the Gestapo yesterday. They were in my salon. I don't know, they were looking for a little girl, Genia, and Genia was this girl's name, and I knew she was Jewish. And Genia wasn't there. She's on her day off. So I don't know what they want from her. She's not Jewish. What do they want from her? When I heard it, I knew that she works there. That day was her day off when they came to look for her. I rushed out of the library. I stood in front of our gate, and when I saw Genia approach from the distance, all I said is, Genia, run, run. And she turned around and disappeared. And I apparently saved her life. That's what she claimed later in Israel, when I saw her in Israel. It's hard to believe such stories.